There is alarm in Europe right now as leaders try to come to terms with the major foreign policy shift from the Trump administration, or really from the U.S. in context of the Trump administration. Just this week, the president called Volodymyr Zelenksyy a dictator, and despite Russia being the aggressor, he accused Ukraine of starting the war. Sarah Wheaton joins me now from Brussels. She's the chief policy correspondent at Politico Europe and host of the EU Confidential podcast at Politico. It's great to have you with us, and I think by now it's been a week since Vice President Vance's speech at that Munich security conference. There were reportedly gasps in the room. Has Europe caught its breath yet and come to terms with new U.S. policy toward Europe?
Honestly, I wouldn't say that it has. I think there's still a lot of hope that this is just bluster from Donald Trump, just a negotiating technique meant to kind of scare them into action. Of course, that action that would need to be taken is increased defense spending, increased responsibility for Europe's own security. There's a recognition that they need to move faster in that direction, but it takes a while to build a defense industrial complex.
Since the end of World War II, in general, European nations have seen the U.S. as having its back. So how now are various nations there reacting to a potential peace deal between the U.S. and Russia, where what President Trump wants seems very similar to Vladimir Putin's goals?
Well, they're making the argument that if the expectation is for Europe to take responsibility for defending Ukraine after whatever sort of peace deal, then Europe needs to be sitting at the table. But that message doesn't seem to be getting through to the White House. We do expect French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to go to Washington next week to pitch a plan to say, look, we are willing to commit tens of thousands of European troops to we're very dedicated to green energy here in Europe, so the lights have just gone off behind me. But
yeah, we can still see you.
They are going to the White House to make the argument that Europe will commit troops, and but in exchange, the U.S. has to make security guarantees. Again, really no signs from the Trump administration that they want to do that. Just this morning, we heard a speech from Friedrich Merz in Germany, who's expected to become the chancellor there after Sunday's election in Germany, basically saying that we probably can't count on the U.S. nuclear umbrella anymore. And so he's asking Paris and London to back up Germany with their nuclear weapons instead of having to rely on the U.S.
Is there, from your point of view, some type of silver lining for European nations? Does this spur more cooperation between them, among them, and does it, shake the place up to get new ideas when it comes to defense and cooperation?
I mean, I hear diplomats and some leaders making this argument, but the reality is it's actually exposed even more fissures within Europe. So you have in countries like Hungary, like Slovakia, that are much more oriented towards Vladimir Putin, towards Donald Trump. They're saying, hey, let's support Trump's peace plan. It's not realistic to expect the U.S. to continue defending Europe. But at the same time, those are not going to be the countries with the military that's prepared to replace the U.S. As far as defending Europe. And so it's become increasingly difficult for the European Union or for NATO to make decisions together. And again, even if they are saying, OK, we get it, we need to change. It takes a long time. We're also seeing the rise of right-wing parties, and cutting social benefits to fund defense will put a lot of pressure on mainstream leaders.
It's a real wake-up call. Sarah Wheaton, we appreciate you joining us from Brussels and demonstrating green energy. Great to chat with you. Have a good weekend.